Okay, never mind. Just stop it. We don't have time for that. This video is going to be long. Let's just go. Political parties: Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Progressive, Conservative, Liberal, and so on and so forth. You've heard them all by now, but why do we have these parties? Where did they come from? What do they do? So many questions. Oh, today we're doing a crash course on political systems to clear the air on all of these issues and understand the underlying differences between parties. So, all political parties and philosophies can be placed somewhere on a scale between individualism and statism. That's to say, Republican, Democrat, Liberal, Conservative, and everything else are just philosophies that estimate the amount of freedom and power that individual citizens should have versus how much freedom and power the state or government should have to achieve the best possible government. Finding the delicate balance between the citizen and the government is quite the trick. This may sound a little complicated right now, but it's going to get real clear when you see this. This scale represents the two extremes in political systems: individualism and statism. The individualism side represents political systems that are focused on creating the maximum amount of freedom and power for each citizen in a society, rather than the state or government, and the statism side represents political systems that are focused on creating the maximum amount of freedom and power for the state, rather than the individual. Put another way, individualism is about less government, and statism is about more government. So here on the furthest tip of individualism, we have anarchy. This is not just a weak government, this is no government. Therefore, each individual in a society has the most amount of power possible because there's no government telling anyone what to do, ever. In strict anarchy, anyone can do whatever seems right to him or her. Some people try to modify the term anarchy to include a very, very limited government that would just step in for extreme situations, but that's not really what anarchy is. Anarchy is no government whatsoever. This is the ultimate in individualism. The thinking in anarchy is that if there's no government, the people will govern themselves and the goodness of human nature will rise up and lead to a free, safe, and happy society without the government telling everyone what to do. Now, from here on out, every political system will add a little more government and therefore be one step closer to statism. Every law, every government program, every government agency, and every tax increases the freedom and power of the government and decreases the freedom and power of the individual. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. You've just got to find the balance between the individual and the government. Moving over a bit, you've got libertarianism. Libertarianism takes anarchy and adds a little bit of government to control things a little bit. The mantra of libertarians is basically anybody should be able to do anything they want as long as it doesn't harm anybody else. And that's where government comes into the picture. In libertarianism, government enters the picture to define what it means to harm another person and to enforce laws that prevent the harming of other people and punish the violators of these laws. At this point, we see basic laws against murder, theft, fraud, rape, and other foundational matters that the vast majority of citizens agree are harmful and should be banned. So you see here that from anarchy to libertarianism, the individual loses the freedom to murder, steal, defraud, or harm other people in any other way, and consequently, the power of the government increases in its ability to define and regulate these things. The emphasis is that much more on the society as a whole and less on the individual. Though they tolerate very basic government, libertarians draw the line when it comes to government laws and regulations that restrict a person's ability to do anything that doesn't harm another person. The only time the government would intervene in a person's life and decisions is if it involves harming another person. An example of this is traffic law. Libertarians would support speed limits and traffic lights because these keep people from harming other people, but they would stop short at requiring a person to wear a seatbelt because that doesn't harm anyone else, and they believe it should be each person's decision to live their life as they see fit. Finally, libertarians favor a very small government, very low taxes, and believe that government should only spend money on absolute basic necessities. The philosophy of libertarianism is that people will be most free and able to prosper when left alone, with just a little bit of government and law to keep the foundation together. Taking another step over, we have conservatism. I'm calling this conservatism, but I'm specifically referring to modern American conservatism. Sometimes these terms morph over time. Modern American conservatism takes up where libertarianism leaves off. In libertarianism, the only time a government intervenes in the life of an individual is to prevent one party from harming another. Therefore, in a libertarian world, the government is restricted to criminal law, tax law, contract law, and just basic structural government functions. They would never make laws to form or shape the culture, nor would they use the government to influence social policy. Conservatism, on the other hand, increases the power of government a little more to regulate non-unanimous moral issues like the definition of marriage or the legality of drug use. Conservatives are more willing to use the power of government to regulate the lives of citizens in certain ways, primarily to preserve tradition and majority opinion. Anarchists and libertarians would say, let the culture follow the people, and conservatives would say, let the people follow the culture. However, conservatives align with libertarians in a preference for lower taxes, smaller government, and less government spending. In short, conservatives are libertarians that believe in a little more government intervention in the lives of individuals, usually to push traditional, cultural, or religious values using the legal system. The idea is that the government should stay out of people's lives for the most part, but should step in to handle basic laws and also protect the nation's culture. Conservatives believe that it's the government's job to regulate major cultural matters. Alright, these are the basic varieties on the individualism side. The next three systems cover the statist side of the spectrum. While anarchy, libertarianism, and conservatism are all examples of systems that involve less government, less laws, and lower taxes, and maintain a stronger emphasis on individual freedom and control over each person's life, these next three systems involve more government, more laws, and more taxes, and a stronger emphasis on the society as a whole, with a decreased emphasis on personal freedom and individuality for each citizen. Modern American liberalism is the first stop on the other side of the chasm. This is also what some people call progressivism. Oddly enough, liberal meant almost the exact opposite 100 or so years ago and was essentially libertarianism, but such is the evolution of language. Today, liberalism is about more government involvement in most areas of life. Liberals resemble conservatives in their propensity to use government to influence culture. The liberals have different values than conservatives, but they take it one step further and support government involvement in education, healthcare, business, television, radio, banking, parenting, transportation, commerce, food, nutrition, environment, innovation, and more. All of these being matters that anarchists, libertarians, and many conservatives wouldn't dare touch. In liberalism, we see the introduction of programs like Social Security, welfare, Medicaid, Medicare, public education, and other community-minded programs. So in liberalism, government gets pretty big, and the individual, while still relatively free and powerful, is much smaller and much more controlled than in the individualist systems. The thinking is that government intervention in more areas of life will keep people safer from danger and deception, economic upsets, and poverty. Liberals favor larger governments, higher rates of taxation, and increased government spending on a variety of programs and regulations. Liberals and progressives believe that the government should be there not only to handle basic laws and functions, but also to regulate all aspects of life to an extent, believing that the government can ensure that everybody is being treated fairly and has all of their needs met. The next step over is socialism and communism. The differences between communism and socialism are negligible, so I'm lumping them together for simplicity. Whereas liberalism advocates the liberal use of government to regulate and control most aspects of people's lives, socialism and communism are complete lockdown. These systems call for the government to regulate almost all aspects of life from cradle to grave. How much money people can make, where they go to school, what they learn, what profession they can choose, oftentimes what people can eat and how much, what can be worn, what kind of entertainment is acceptable, and really anything else that the government leaders decide they should control. Sometimes this even includes religion. This is a completely societally focused mindset where the government leaders are charged with doing anything they see fit that they believe will benefit the society as a whole. In these systems, there really is no individual, just the society. In a completely socialistic or communistic society, a baby will be born in a government hospital, grow up on government health care, go to a government school, be tested for a government profession, possibly eat government food and wear government clothes, retire on a government social security program, and be buried in a government plot. There is no such thing as owning property. The government owns any and all property and usually confiscates inheritances after a person dies to be reallocated by the state. The thinking is that well-educated moral leaders can make better decisions for society and its citizens than individual people, and if everybody is controlled, then there will be complete equality amongst everyone and poverty will be eliminated, and in turn, crime will be reduced because everybody would be equal and taken care of, and there's in theory no room for jealousy. Moreover, they believe that everything will be run more smoothly if there is one entity that controls everything, rather than millions of people making individual decisions, forming individual companies and individual policies, and every man doing whatever seems right to him. So in these political systems, the individual is very small and not very free, making only insignificant personal decisions for himself or herself, and the state is very large, handling all major decisions in a society. Big government, lots of government spending, very high taxes, many government regulations and programs, that's socialism and communism. It's essentially liberalism with a lot more government intervention. I should mention, however, that in each of these systems, there are varying degrees of intensity. Not all socialist or communist governments incorporate all of the policies I've mentioned. Every government is a little different, as one would expect. The very last step over would be despotism. This is basically where a dictator is in charge that quite literally does anything he wants. It could be a monarchy, kings, queens, princes, princesses, etc., an autocracy, or even an exaggerated socialist or communist society. In socialism and communism, though there really isn't much individual freedom or power, the concept is at least set up as a government by the people for the people, and the leaders just manage the property of the people. In despotism or dictatorship, it's all about the leader. The citizens are just subjects, and the leader has free rein to do literally anything he or she wants. In some cases, the despots claim to be acting for the good of their countrymen, and other times they are purely self-interested or greedy dictators. In despotism, the state, which is the despot, is massive and all-powerful, and the individual is absolutely powerless beyond the power that the despot chooses to give them. So those are 6 basic markers along the scale from individualism to statism. There are, of course, other political systems that could be squeezed into the spectrum: fascism, plutocracy, theocracy, republics, democracies, etc. But the 6 I've selected to cover give a close enough idea of the nature and degrees of variety in political systems as they progress from a completely individualistic system to a completely statist system. You probably figured this out already, but just in case you haven't, Republicans typically reside somewhere around libertarianism and conservatism. Democrats typically reside somewhere around liberalism and sometimes into socialism and communism. These guys are usually third party, like Green Party or Occupy Wall Street types, and these guys are fringe with very few subscribers, at least in America. America started out in its founding in the libertarian zone, and over the years has slowly worked its way over to, I'd say, moderate liberalism / progressivism. So this is what these systems are in theory. Disclaimer, I tried to make this as clean, brief, and simple as possible. As a result, I did make some concessions. 1, as I stated earlier, I use the terms as they are defined in modern times rather than how they were defined at inception. 2, I did not include the way these systems address foreign policy. Maybe I'll do that in another video if there's an interest in that. 3, I generalized each system's viewpoints, but just like anything else, there will be exceptions. Every person in government is different, and many fall in between the parties mentioned here. Others give and take from here and there and create their own hybrid. For extremely detailed information, Google is your daddy. Thanks, bye.